It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. We continue our NFL draft prospect coverage leading up to the April 25th first round start here in Detroit, Michigan. In this episode, we'll look at the cornerbacks. This is a very deep group this year with a multitude of day 1 and 2 prospects available. The Detroit Lions had a huge need for an upgrade here prior to the free agency period, but now that the Lions have addressed this group, is there still a priority to find another? We'll discuss that important topic and more next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzinski. Drew, it is Sunday, April 7th, and we are 18 days away, Coach, from the NFL draft here in Detroit, Michigan. I'm joined by Coach Andy Shield, Marine City Mariners. Coach, how are you?
Doing well, Drew. Yeah, it's getting closer and closer to that weekend here. Construction's underway and, building things out and, city's getting ready for it.
Yeah, I was excited. I've been downtown all week doing my civic duty, and I also had an opportunity to go to the Red Wing game on Friday against the Rangers, and driving downtown as the opening day crowd's leaving. That was interesting. Waze doesn't account for a lot of those temporary blockages, so I had to get a little creative there. But all was well. It was awesome. It is so festive. You can see the stage being built, the scaffolding and stuff. It's really, really cool. A lot of the banners up on the streets. It's a cool vibe, man. And there's just so much going up, and it's neat. I think people are going to really, after that weekend, they're going to have a very distinct, different impression of downtown Detroit and Detroit as a whole. It's going to be a happening. We've been looking forward to this for a while, so we're excited.
Absolutely.
Couple of housekeeping issues we want to take care of here, because we're going to jump into the cornerback position here. And this is and like we said in the intro, it's a real deep group, and certainly the Lions will be paying attention to it, as they should. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one thing we do want to mention, on the last episode, we talked about Brock Wright signing his offer letter from the Niners, and we kind of thought basically he was gone. Yeah. No, he's back. The Lions matched it. And really, Coach, it's a 3-year, $12 million deal, but it's really a 3-year, $6 million deal with incentives. So it's not a terrible deal cap wise. And Brock Wright, what he brings to the table is very helpful. He's an excellent blocker and he's an opportunistic pass catcher. But your thoughts on Brock Wright coming back?
Oh, it's great. I mean, it really, he is part of that core. If we do have an issue with via an injury or something like that, I mean, Brock Wright has been tight end one. He's played it, during the resurgence. When we had moved on from TJ Hawkinson, Brock Wright was inserted into that role and showed that he can perform. And he's an outstanding blocker, which lends to the kind of philosophy of the offense. So and he's a guy that's been around. He understands the culture. He's part of the culture. He's kind of part of the fabric there. And, and not only that, we would be losing that kind of fabric piece and he going to a conference rival in the San Francisco 49ers. So, that would have been a double whammy. But we keep a great player, a guy that's a Detroit Lion kind of glue guy that does the Detroit Lions things, that gives us the Detroit Lions that we're going to know. And so this is a big step in the right direction in regards to the tight end room. And yes, a pleasant surprise that we were able to get something worked out. And we weren't having to kind of, look for our new tight end too.
Yeah, I think unless somebody falls in their lap that they're just enamored with, there's no need to be looking tight end in the draft this year. The room is back in full. Zylstra as well.
Undrafted free agents aside, we always got to compete. Tight end 3 is always something that should be competed for. We have James Mitchell, who's proven to be a guy that's really kind of catching on to the Lions' way of doing things in regards to tight end. But I agree with you in that it's not a something that we're really looking to probably need to do on day 3 now.
Yeah, absolutely. But definitely glad to have Brock Wright back. Another item of note, and a week before the draft on April 18th, the Lions are unveiling their new uniforms. They've done a very nice job of keeping this tight lip because there hasn't been any leaks. And Rod Wood was very cryptic in his description of it, but it was positive, of course. I'm looking forward to that, Coach. Do you have any thoughts on what direction you think they might go?
I don't think it's going to be drastic. I think they are very much, here we're in a major uptick in Detroit Lions football, probably the best since definitely the early 90s. In that vibe, we really have never had this probably since, the era of the 50s and 60s, because I think in the 60s there was expectations that the Lions could win NFL championships, at least in the early and mid 60s. We're not going to get away from some of our tradition. We're going to be Honolulu blue and silver. There's going to be, I know the color rushes are going to be reinvented. And I believe that's going to be more of a blue thing.
Yeah, I'm happy about that.
I think that's probably going to be more of a blue or a all blue or an all white thing. I think the icy whites are here to stay.
They're slick.
It sounds like there's going to be different pant combinations, and definitely an enhancement on the numbers. That's pretty clear. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a jersey and uniform geek. I like that kind of a thing. And I know the William Clay Ford II kind of honoring the patch, so to speak, is going to be kind of done differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, so there's going to be some tweaks, but I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, we'll have fun critiquing that once it's unveiled.
Hopefully it's not like the new Major League Baseball uniforms.
Yeah, they're awful. I saw your tweet. They gave Blake Corum a nice jersey for his first pitch for today, and
that was a proper jersey.
Yeah,
it had the right last name on it.
Yeah, nice and big and bold, like it should be. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into that one. Those look terrible. A lot of people agree with that, and I think baseball already understands it too. Hey, Coach, right before we jump into this, though, we are the Sports Peninsula podcast, so we aren't just a football podcast. We talk about all things state of Michigan, and something very near and dear to our hearts, especially yours. Chauncey Billups was named to the Hall of Fame. Mr. Big Shot is going in. The Go on the Work crew is going to have a second Hall of Famer. Talk about that briefly, if you would.
In life, and in sports, mirror each other, and Chauncey Billups is truly a testament of it's not how it starts, it's how it finishes. And he was a first-round draft pick out of the University of Colorado, and many were pointing at him at that time. He was, a middle 90s draft pick. That he was one of these guys that left too early, that he should have stayed longer. He wasn't mature enough. And he was moved, I think, 3 times in the first 4 years. And at that time, that was very uncharacteristic for first-round draft picks to be kind of moved around like that. And he was kind of being cast off as a guy that wasn't going to reach potential. Not a bust or a bad player per se, but a guy that's going to be kind of a vagabond, kind of a streaky shooter, score first point guard that, kind of either stops the gap or buys the time for you. And nothing much more. Well, things changed. When he went to Minnesota, he kind of caught his chops a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was on a show me deal. And that turned into something that Joe Dumars decided to capitalize on. And the rest is history. Chauncey Billups played for the Nuggets. He played for the Celtics. He played for the Bucks. He played for the Timberwolves, as mentioned before, and then with the Pistons. And yes, again, he was moved to Denver in the Iverson deal. Finished up, I believe, back with us after yet another stint with the LA Clippers too. So Chauncey played for a lot of teams. But he is definitely best known as Mr. Big Shot for the Detroit Pistons. Kind of the true. That was such a great team. And in the Bad Boys, definitely Isaiah was the star. I mean, that was so well known. Chauncey was for the going to work Pistons too. He really was that guy. He kind of was the driving force, to use a cliche, I guess. So I mean, if there's a face of the going to work Pistons, it would probably be Chauncey Billups or Rasheed Wallace or Ben Wallace. Even though Richard Hamilton and Tayshaun Prince and those guys deserve as much credit as anybody. But this is great for Chauncey Billups. His shot to keep that. I want to say it was Game 6
New Jersey
of the Eastern Conference Final going. That oh my goodness, that was something else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and just so many other things, and just being who he was in those NBA Finals against the Lakers, and just commanding that, and just basically taking it right out of Kobe's hands and saying, "I'm going to quarterback this Finals. My team is going to do it." So I mean, great guy, great leader. Hopefully he's back here one day, helping get this organization turned back around. That's the best thing that's happened to the Pistons all year.
Yeah, no question, bar none, no question. They needed that, and so did he. Congratulations to Chauncey Billups. Coach, let's jump into the cornerbacks now. We're shifting gears right back to football. So going into this offseason, it was very clear that the Lions needed some help at cornerback. There were struggles back there. They were struggling to generate a pass rush, which absolutely exposes a secondary that if they need help, they're going to be in big trouble. And ultimately, I mean, they were able to. They played through it as well as you can. They made it to the NFC Championship, and quite frankly, should have won that game. They're a very good team, but they need help here. And then, even though Cam Sutton struggled in the second half of that year, then we have the issue with Cam Sutton. The Lions ultimately cut him. Let's talk about that. And then first we'll talk about that, but then they did address some needs in the free agency. But Coach, first, your thoughts, they got to replace Cam Sutton now. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and they still do. They prior to the unfortunate events that have led to Cam Sutton's release and subsequent surrender to authorities down in Florida, there was moving and shaking going on. I mean, he was going to be competing for his really roster spot, I think, to a certain degree. So I don't think this was out of the question. There were clear struggles when we asked Cam Sutton to do something that he's probably not very adept at doing, and that's being a press man, lead front end corner, where he really has to be the guy that really is a mano-a-mano on the X receiver, the guy they're really trying to get open downfield. And that was a very, 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 very big struggle for him. He's an off corner. And that's what he played best in his time in Pittsburgh. And, when we were allowing him to do so here in Detroit. So he was really kind of a fish out of water in that regard. Was he going to be going back to that off corner spot? Probably. That's probably what he's going to be more competing for and probably would have been a little bit more successful in. Unfortunately, Cam Sutton appears to have made some decisions that have altered his career path. And we'll just say this, it's very, very unfortunate. The Lions had to do the right thing here, and reality will hopefully take its course here for Cameron Sutton, and that he can one day, look down the road. But Cam Sutton's not on the Detroit line anymore, unless we'll just go at that, right? And and that roster spot's still there. Yes, we've got Robertson. Yes, we've got
Davis in the trade.
Davis, who's really the centerpiece, true starter. That we have that. We have Branch. We swung and missed on Tavir Thomas from Ferris State, who was going to be a depth signing, but we got Kendall Valdor, I think, in response to that.
Yeah.
And despite the fool's jokes, Jerry Jacobs didn't sign a 3-year, $70 million guaranteed contract that was reported. So that was false too. So yes, there's still room for the Lions to draft a cornerback. There's still potentially room for the Lions to draft a quarterback relatively high. Davis and Robertson aren't going to be here forever. And we have lost Cam Sutton. He is not here any longer. Mosley is back, but again, that's a short-term deal. So is there some space? Yes. Do we need to draft that at 29? I think if that is our clear and best present option, we certainly do, because there's very distinct possibility, and we'll be getting into that here shortly, of a pretty special player being available potentially at that time. All that being said, is this position a priority per se? Have we done some work to make this something that we don't have to do day one, or even maybe right away on day two? Yes, we have done that too.
Yeah, I think what they've done, and I agree with you, Coach, through free agency, is they've made it where they still have options. They don't have to go with they don't have to draft corner at 29. But to your point, if the right piece is there and that's the best player on their board, you bet they're taking them, because they do need a corner. But what's beautiful about this draft, and this is where Lions fans, you got to trust Brad Holmes. You just got to trust him, because there may be a big name at 29 and they may not go in that direction. But I'm going to tell you what, there is so much value on day two. And even going into there's day two guys that are going to be pushed into day three, because teams have already addressed the corner position. They're looking to address other spots. They're going to go to day three. You literally, in the 4th or 5th round, could get a guy that could potentially start on your team. That's how deep this class, it's my opinion, that's how deep this group is. And it's going to be fun to talk about, Coach. So let's get right to it. Talking about those cornerbacks, Coach. And again, we have our top 20. Let's run through them.
Well, hey, we're going to go from bottom right to the upper left corner in serpentine fashion to give you the Sports Peninsula podcast top 20 cornerbacks on their big board for the 2024 draft. Nehemiah Pritchett out of Auburn. He's at number 20 at 19. Jerrion Jones from Florida State. Tall at number 18 is Cam Hart out of Notre Dame. Big, tall corner. He's an interesting guy. That's somebody that you could look at the Lions potentially targeting in some way, shape, or form in the draft. Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. He sits at 17. At 16 is Josh Newton from TCU. It's a guy that's been talked about in multiple draft cycles. At 15, one of the top cornerbacks out of the Big Ten, out of Rutgers, Max Melton. At 14, this is another guy I think the Lions could be looking at. This would be more of a day 2 probably pick at this point. This is a guy that would be in that area, but that's Kalen Carson. We will be talking about him in a little bit greater detail here very, very shortly. DJ James at 13 out of Auburn. Chris Abrams-Drain out of Missouri, one of 2 Missouri Tiger corners that we will be featuring here today in our cornerbacks preview. He sits in at 12. At 11 is Kalen King out of Penn State. Our top 10, all guys that are going to be featured here on the Sports Peninsula podcast cornerbacks preview. Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon, real tall, long player, transferred out of Alabama, real intriguing guy. We'll be talking about him a little bit more here down the road. Mike Sandrostro out of the University of Michigan. Little Mr. Football player, can play all over the place. Great looking guy. We'll be talking about him here shortly. TJ Tampa out of Iowa. He sits in at number 8. Out of Iowa State. He sits in at number 8. Another guy that we're going to be talking about here, Kamari Lassiter. He's our first dark horse candidate we'll be speaking of. He's out of Georgia at number 7. Into the top 6. Top off corner in the country, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri. He's at number 6. Into our top 5. JaQuincy Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. He is number 5. And a guy I know a lot of Lions fans like, I think just because his name is his name that he goes by is Kool-Aid, but I think a lot of Lions fans like his play too and would love to see him here. Deeper into the top 5 at number 4, a MAC player from the Toledo Rockets, Quinyon Mitchell. At number 3, a very diversified prospect. This is a guy that we'll be talking about, I think, in feature, and this is somebody that also could be an intriguing Detroit Lions target. Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. At number 2 is Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. And at number 1, and standing at number 1, and the guy that will be featuring first here on the cornerbacks preview is Nate Wiggins out of Clemson.
It's a great group, and folks, trust me, there's names from 21 back as well that are very interesting. It's just I'm really impressed with this group, and it's just so deep and very exciting. We're going to jump into it now. Coach, let's talk about Nate Wiggins out of Clemson.
Nate Wiggins, as mentioned a minute ago, is our number one cornerback prospect for the 2024 draft. He is a 6'2", 185-pounder out of Clemson University. From Atlanta. He's a 4-star recruit, ran a 4.28 40. So he's got sublime, supreme speed. 2-time All-ACC selection, 24 career pass breakups, 3 career interceptions. He's got a 56.7 career QBR when targeted. That's low. That's pretty low. So that's where a lot of it, he translates with his speed and some of his skill that he puts out on film. And analytically, he really translates. 44.4 QBR against in 2023. So, and he was targeted his fair share. 50 receptions against 109 targets. So they not even, every other ball in a passing league is even getting caught when it's thrown in his direction. So this is good stuff. 3 career touchdowns allowed, and he played a lot of football in his little span of time over in South Carolina at Clemson. So this is a guy here, Drew, that we're hanging on number one. There's some that have, maybe Terry and Arnold in that spot. Some have Cooper DeJean in that area. There are even some that have Kool-Aid McKinstry in it. They're number one. We got Nate Wiggins. He's got a great body of work. This is a guy that's going in the first round.
Yeah, so much to like about Nate Wiggins, from his size to his speed to his statistics. I mean, just a lot to like. What else do you like about him, Coach?
Well, he is long, 6'2", and he plays long. He really uses his frame to his advantage. He's very long, rangy, useful frame. Can cover a lot of ground. He can disrupt a lot. He can make himself tall. He can make himself lean. He can make himself fast. He's a guy that really has a disruptive frame as a cornerback. He's a very, very good athlete with incredible straight line speed. He can recover like no one else in this draft, really out of the route stem. So, I mean, this is a guy that really is able to get back in phase and defend and man coverage like not many in this draft, if any at all. He plays a very reliable physical edge, and is out there as a solid run defender too. He gets pretty slippery. He knows how to leverage his body, kind of use what we refer to as a boss technique without not really, giving himself up physically too much. It's a great way to destruct a block. He can do this a little bit for a guy that's a little bit more of lean build, because you can see how sinewy and lean he is there in this photo. He's got real quick, precise feet. He's a great mirror in man coverage. There's really no other candidates that do it quite like he does. He's outstanding at it. His awareness is phenomenal. He understands how to really kind of patrol a zone as well. He can really reduce dimensions of an offense out there by using his technique and physicality. Very fluid moving athlete. He's confident in both man and zone schemes. This is your number one corner, Drew. This is the guy that, he has misgivings, and there's others that do things in certain areas better than Nate Wiggins, but by and large, Nate Wiggins, touches a little bit better than most on most categories.
Yeah, and you got to split some hairs a little bit when we talk about Nate Wiggins, what he needs to work on, because he does so many things so well, and even the things he does struggle with, he's able to overcome that with his incredible speed and IQ. But what do you see Coach say he needs to maybe work on, or maybe it's going to hinder him a bit?
Well, he's very slender. This is something that in football, unfortunately, is just physically, and and I guess you can take the metaphysics or the biophysics to it. And slender build people get moved easier. Smaller people can have leverage, but can also struggle in being able to physically compete. So, that is something that's going to, be a concern. Is his physicality, or what he brings to the table in regards to physicality going to translate based off of his body type? Because he's not a tremendous natural tackler. He's kind of a slide gator type guy, kind of a gator and roll type guy. which is a great technique and all, but I mean that's really what he brings to the table. He's not going to physically command himself out there too much in the tackling game, and that's going to have to improve. He can be a little too comfortable in the route stuff because he's got such great recovery speed. And, if he relies on that in the NFL, he's going to be running somebody right into the end zone, and they're going to have the football. So, I mean, that's something that's going to have to improve. His ball skills are good. They're very, very good. He's got to refine them to really optimize himself in the NFL and be that true CB1 that, I'm sure, that obviously he's built for. He can struggle getting off blocks. These are things that are going to have to improve in his area. He's got to become he's got to become physically stronger, because bigger wide receivers can kind of have their way with him, and kind of can push, get away with some of those push offs, and just really in the run phase, really just kind of own him, in that area as well. So yeah, got to get bigger, got to get stronger, got to get better as a run defender. Are some of the things that Nate Wiggins can, use to work on here.
So when we talk about what the Lions could do here, Nate Wiggins is a top 10 talent, and could very possibly be selected. And I think, quite frankly, with between 5 and 10 are very, very distinct possibilities for him. But, again, the Lions Brad Holmes has been very active in the draft. So to say they're going to trade back or trade up could be all of the above. Who knows? They certainly have done it before. They've done it the last 2 years. They traded up 2 years ago to get JMO. They traded back in last year, and then we're still able to land Gibbs and also then Jack Campbell. There's a lot they can do. But if the Lions were to trade up to target a guy like Nate Wiggins, or perhaps Nate Wiggins in particular, man, I wouldn't argue with it. There's a lot to like here. This young man is an instant starter, will make an impact very quickly. And I agree, Coach. If he gets a little stronger, wow. I mean, his coverage skills are there. So no doubts about that, really. But it's a matter, will he be able to be sufficient in against the run, and will he be able to get a little stronger? I think he'll definitely get stronger. The question is, how good will he be against the run? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But Nate Wiggins, there's so much to like there. And you hope a guy like that's available at 29, and you never know, there could be. So let's see. But Coach,
yeah, I mean, and I know we're transitioning here, but just to piggyback off of that real quick, I mean, in regards to Wiggins, I mean, I don't know if that's what it's going to take to get Nate Wiggins. I don't know if we need to be able to. There's a need for us to trade up to go get him with all that we have acquired for. But I tell you what, if somehow Nate Wiggins was at 29, that would be something that'd be very hard not to do.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, we see him as the number one.
I don't think he's going to be. Neither one of these two prospects I think that we're talking about are going to be.
No. But the boards are very different. Like you said, even Wiggins at times has been third or fourth on some boards. But that's not a knock on him. It's just that's how deep this class is. It really is. But let's talk about our number 2 guy, Coach.
Yep, number 2 on the big board for corners at the SPP 2024 NFL Draft preview is Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, 6 foot, 196-pound redshirt sophomore. So really only 2 years of work is really what we're really working off of. Because of the COVID era, which is about ready to expire, it was 3. But this is a guy that's young in his football chops. Out of Tallahassee, Florida. He was a 5-star prospect that Coach Saban brought in. 10.9 broad jump, very athletic guy, explosive, twitchy athlete. He was a freshman All-American and an All-American at Alabama. He was a freshman All-SEC selection and an All-SEC selection at Alabama. So he translated really, really well. He got in and he fit in and he played and succeeded for the Crimson Tide. 108 career tackles, 7.5 career tackles for loss, 26 career pass breakups, 6 career INTs, 66.7 career QBR when targeted, for a guy that really only has 2 real substantive years of college ball under his belt. Terrion Arnold really, really produced for Alabama.
Yeah, that's impressive in a short an early body of work. It's not like he's not a senior coming out and only played his last 2 years. He's literally freshman, sophomore year. That's it. That's impressive, Coach. What else do you like about him?
Well, he's got a very strong, impressive frame. 6 foot, 200 pounds. That's a well-built cornerback. Very confident, physical man cover. So this is a guy that you can get over your your top receiver. You can game plan with Terrion Arnold as the guy covering the top receiving threat in man coverage for your defense. Primarily an outside corner. He does offer some alignment versatility. He can move around a little bit. And if you wanted to use him as a blitzer, you could, but he's primarily an outside corner. So he's your CB1 in that regard. Great functional use of his speed and agility. He can flip his hips, turn, pretty fluid. Similar to that of Nate Wiggins, maybe not quite as flexible and as impressive in that area, but outstanding speed and agility. He's getting more and more comfortable as a zone cover. Press man and man coverage is his thing, but he's getting to become a good zone cover. So he's scheme versatile in that area. Very hard hitting, consistent tackler. Probably brings a little bit more to the table than Nate Wiggins does in that category, which is important. Very impressive on the ball. He's got very, very nice ball skills. Pretty natural in that area. He attacks the flats and screens real aggressively. He navigates at the line of scrimmage very patiently and with aggression. So he is able to come off of blocks a little bit more and be a little bit more clear and present in the run game. He has the physical, the talent and the physicality to shut down all types of wide receivers, big physical wide receivers, quick, nuanced finesse guys, these route running, dynamic movers, the little guys. He's very good at all different types. Extremely fluid and flexible mirror and man coverage. Another excellent man coverage corner. Hard to go wrong with Terrion Arnold, Drew. It's very, very hard to go wrong with him. Many, many people have him atop the board.
Yeah, and I can see why. Just watching film, watching games with Alabama, I'm just very impressive athlete, very impressive corner. Not much not to like, quite frankly. But there are some things to work on, or some things that are maybe a question. So what do you see, Coach?
Well, Nate Wiggins can play fairly similar. He can play fairly similar, but Nate Wiggins has got a little bit more reach and a little bit more length. And Terrion Arnold doesn't come out as successful on his gambles as maybe a Nate Wiggins does. He doesn't recover quite as well. So he, and it shows in a few different areas. He can miss some tackles out there. He can whiff. He's a little bit more physical. He's not going to try to secure and kind of gather and roll. He's going to try to hit you. And there are times he's going to bounce off a little bit, and that's going to be an issue. He attacks that route stem very aggressively. He does not always win all the time. If you attack that route stem very aggressively, 2 of 3 things are likely. One is defensive holding, and the other is defensive pass interference. So those are things that you got to be concerned about. And where he is in his development in that area. He can kind of get phased out and lost and lose balance in dynamic routes, which is, that really goes for almost every corner in the league. But, that does happen where, he really gets off balance, almost has to put a hand down sometimes. And by that point in time, he's all about recovery speed because the separation's been created. He is more proficient as a man corner than he is a zone corner at this rate. Probably not quite as scheme versatile as Nate Wiggins in that area. He's drawn a decent amount of penalties. He needs, further development and maturation. He's young in his career, really only 2 years. He's not a ton of miles on Terrion Arnold, but there's not a lot of reps either. So, he's mistimed his deep ball at the catch point at times, which is a big no-no with these arms and these big, tall receivers that can go down there and catch the football. So, those are things they're going to have to refine in his game.
Yeah, and to me,
still a fantastic prospect.
Oh,
another guy that probably the Lions are not going to be able to get their hands on.
No, but I'll echo what I said about Wiggins. If for some reason Brad Holmes and company decided to make a move and get a Terrion Arnold, there should be a lot of rejoicing here in Detroit. He's a great player. I like him better against the run than Wiggins, which you articulated well, Coach. I do like Wiggins overall better as a pure corner. And I think that's really what differentiated them in our rankings. But, you can't go wrong with either of these guys. But Terry and Arnold, man, he's kind of a total package. It really is. And if they can get him to just be a little more patient and dial it back a little bit. Again, you don't want to stifle a player, obviously, as a coach or a team. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, you've got to be able to harness that aggression and use it when appropriate, or you're going to get penalties. And then so I think there's a little more, a little lower floor for Arnold than Wiggins, but maybe as high, if not maybe the same ceiling, if not a little higher, if he's able to do that. But two great players. So again, right here, wouldn't be surprised at all if Terry and Arnold snuck into the top 10. That's how talented he is, Coach. I agree with you. Let's talk about our third prospect here from Iowa, the Big Ten.
Yeah, our number 3 guy, and a guy that moved up the board just a tad bit here. We had him at 4, but you look at his film, and you just can't deny this guy is an electric just football player and a true playmaker. In at number 3 at the cornerback is defensive back, because he's not exclusively a corner. He's a safety as well, is Cooper DeJean out of the University of Iowa, 6'1", 207 junior, big cornerback. He's out of the state of Iowa, out of Oldbelt, Iowa, 4-star recruit. He was an All-American. He was the 2023 Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year, and he was the 2023 Big Ten Return Specialist of the Year. So this is a guy that was really one of the premier players in the Big Ten Conference. And unfortunately didn't get to finish his season because of a foot injury. But at any rate, he was a 2-time All-Big Ten defensive back and return man for the Hawkeyes. 24.1 yards per punt return in 2023. 24.1 yards per punt return in 2023. So that shows you how explosive he is and was for the Hawkeyes. 120 career tackles, 20 career PBUs, 7 career interceptions. So he generated on the ball a lot in his day at the University of Iowa. 3 career defensive touchdowns. So this is guy's a house call. He's a dynamic mover. He can do some things with the ball in his hand. He had 3 career defensive touchdowns himself. He had 2 career touchdowns against. So he scored more touchdowns than he actually gave up. So this is a real unique prospect, and a guy I don't think is going to be there for the Detroit Lions either. But I tell you what, if somehow this player was in and around an area, this is a player you trade up for, Drew. This is a guy that is a safety. We could use some safety help. He is a corner. We could use some corner help. He is a punt returner. We could always use a guy to challenge and maybe be in that role. We've used several different people in that role. So there's all sorts of reasons to like Cooper DeJean as an NFL football prospect, and certainly a Detroit Lions prospect too. I know that we're covering the draft. We're not just doing Lions, although it'd be real easy to do so. But this is a guy that I would circle as a potential Detroit Lion.
Yeah, Coach, I 100% agree. He's been number 1 on many people's boards, many publications boards as well at the cornerback position. So he's no joke. We certainly saw a lot of him in the Big Ten. Certainly saw, obviously he was hurt last year. We saw a lot of him in the championship game, I should say. But we saw a lot of him. There's so much to like about him. I think there's even more though. And let's talk a little deeper about what else you like about Cooper DeJean.
He's a very high-level natural athlete. You know, we always kind of look at the big schools and the big pools of competition that yield the great athletes in our sports in our country. And there's certainly a ton of truth to that. You know, that can't be argued. That people aren't going to say that's not true. But Old Bolt, Iowa produces them too, and towns like this, because he's a very high-level, explosive natural athlete. He's a very concise, technical guy that uses outstanding footwork. He's a very teched up, coached up football player. He has all sorts of alignment and position versatility. He's, can be a slot corner. He can be an outside corner. He can be a safety. He's a former high school quarterback, and you could just see in his dynamic movements that, he's very comfortable moving like an offensive player. So he mirrors well. in man coverage. He's got, very rare size for a corner. He's 6'1", 207. I mean, that's kind of like strong safety build. And, he's out there, being physical and firm on the outside or taking away the inside as a slot corner. That's a big kid doing it. He's got that stop and start speed engagement that we talked about with receivers. He has that and can bring that as a defensive back. So again, just a very rare blend of bringing the same kind of athleticism a receiver brings onto the field. When you have a defensive back that's like that, you typically have somebody that's very disruptive. He's got outstanding football IQ. Played also, he's an offense, he's a quarterback, so we know he knows this game and knows how to operate this game, manage this game. Very natural zone defender, very comfortable playing zone. That means he translates as a safety well, and he is a tremendous punt returner. At Iowa, and he's celebrated as the Big Ten's punt returner of the year this past season. So this is a guy that brings a lot to the table, Drew, and that's probably why he is number one on the board and unattainable for the Detroit Lions, ultimately. But and you can see this is why a lot of people have them. We have them at 3, but number one on their board.
Yeah, and I think more people would know more about him if the Hawkeyes had a more potent offense during his time there. Their defense has been outstanding, and we can attest to that. They've won the Big Ten West at least 2 years in a row. And I don't know if it's longer than that, Coach, but Iowa's been very successful in the former Big Ten West, which of course is no more now. But they've been very strong out there, and the team was kind of an also-ran in that respect, compared to Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. But at the same time, that defense is no joke. He's a big part of it. But what can he work on, or what are some issues that you see?
So with Cooper DeJean, he can lose balance, kind of cutting and breaking into his footwork. So I could see him, racing in the route stems and kind of losing out and coming up, on some what is termed as whiffs. Either in the run game or getting burned, so to speak, and man coverage. So those are some things that, are definitely going to probably present themselves at times to him, as they are most young defensive backs in the NFL. He has broken his fibula in November of 2023. So late in the season, he sustained, an injury that, ended his campaign. So, hopefully that's not going to be something of concern there. Not a super seasoned press man cover guy. He's played a lot of safety, played a lot of off corner. He's been moved around a lot. He has played some press man, but I'm not so sure that's his forte. He's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none in regards to some of his positional alignments. And that would be the result of that. More of a muscular build and flexible build, which is not kind of what you see in this modern day and age with defensive backs, or super muscle bound type guys. He's very muscular. So, does he present the flexibility and requisite flexibility and functional flexibility it's going to take for him to succeed as a defensive back at the NFL? Because he's not the most fluid, even though he's pretty dynamic in many ways. Very creative guy and a playmaker with the ball in his hands as a punt returner. He can lack some of that flexibility and change of direction that we see or need to see out of defensive backs. Is he an outside corner? Is he a slot corner? Is he a safety? We're not quite sure. And he's going to have to find his fit at one of those positional types, because he's probably going to narrow in a little bit more. But those are some things that probably work against Cooper DeJean and some of his draft slotting.
Now, great job.
He's number one on many people's boards. There's second to none. There's no one that provides the versatility he does as a defensive back, but at the same time, that almost works against him a little bit too.
Which my question to you is, does he have the Brian Branch effect on him, where for whatever reason Brian Branch slipped in the draft, and thankfully the Lions were able to get him, but very similar skill set in the sense that he can do a lot of things. But what do you think, Coach?
Well, history does have a tendency of repeating itself in this draft, because we've seen that time and time and time again. People that are tweeners, or they, master of jack of all trades, master of none, type, tags put on guys. If they want to do that to Cooper DeJean and he slides and Brad Holmes is pumping his fist and hugging people and slapping hands, we just found ourselves yet another great Detroit Lion, because that's how I think that would work. Is there some truth? Is he a great press man corner or anywhere near the best in this draft? No, not at all. Is he the best off corner and off cover corner in this draft? No. Is he the best corner in this draft? No, probably not. Is he the best safety in this draft? No, probably not. Is he the best punt returner in this draft? Ultimately, there's probably someone's going to prove that to be wrong. These things being said, he is elite, and what makes him elite is he does so many things very, very well. But is any one of them the best? That would probably need to be refined.
Yeah, and the fact that we even have to ask the question, is he the best at all of those in all those areas? I mean, that really speaks volumes of how good he really is. Because no, he's not the number one guy. He may be the number 2 or number 3 guy in all those areas. But guess what? That's pretty damn good. This guy is just a total package. My only concern as a Lions fan would be, which one are you going to be? Because we've already got Brian Branch. You've already got a guy like that who's basically a slot corner right now. So the Lions could use a safety, but they definitely could use a corner. So I guess bottom line is Brad Holmes and company need to say, yeah, this is definitely going to be a corner if he's available, which is a big if. I don't see it happening.
And they don't have to, because they have areas in safety too that they could draft. So I mean, they could draft him with the auspice of him being a safety. That's smart too, because we're looking to upgrade and fill that area as well.
Yeah, lots to like about Cooper DeJean, no question. Let's jump into our number 4 prospect, coach, from the MAC. We always like talking about the MAC.
Yep, 2 position groups in a row. We had one of our Western Michigan Broncos the last go around. Well, this time we got a Toledo Rocket. Quinyon Mitchell, 6 foot, 196 pounder, same exact frame as Terrion Arnold, junior out of the University of Toledo. He's our number 4 cornerback prospect for the 2024 draft. Out of Williston, Florida, runs a 4.33 40. So we're talking about elite speed. That's showstopper speed. Not only can he really burn it up on the turf, 21 reps at 225. That's really unheard of as for a corner. That's very, very strong for a cornerback. 2-time All-American, 2-time All-MAC selection. He's University of Toledo's all-time leader in pass breakups, 122 career tackles, 6.5 career tackles for loss, 6 career interceptions, 5 in 2022. So 2 seasons ago, he had a real big year. 52 career pass breakups. 52. And that, I think, is something that a lot of people are seeing. This was a kid that by just design of the Toledo defense was always going to be tasked with really heading off the most, I guess, viable pass option for the offense. So he was in and around it all the time. He was targeted a lot. And that was by design by Toledo. They wanted this guy having a say in that. 54.7 career QBR when targeted in 2022. The QBR against him was 34.8, which is just absolutely putrid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to call Quinyon Mitchell a shutdown corner in the Mid-American Conference is, being able to call the McDonald's sign red and yellow.
Yeah, it's legit.
pretty accurate.
Yeah, and again, anytime we're talking about a mid-major or a small school or even FBS school, we're talking about what kind of competition he played, but he dominated his competition, and that's what that statistics tell us. Yeah, he's a great player. Can he play against the NFL in the NFL? Well, we're gonna find out pretty quick, I'm sure. But he dominated in the MAC, and that's hard to do. It's hard to do, but he did it. What else do you like about him, Coach?
Well, his game speed is truly elite. There's really no one in this position group that moves quite like this. He's been clocked at 24 miles an hour, in game speed. So he runs a 4.33 40, but plays with phenomenal speed. Elite game speed, tremendous vision and field sense, and that really shows in his film. Honestly, does his film work against him in this regard? that, it doesn't yield against some of the highest level competition. That does work against Quinion Mitchell, which I know we're talking about strengths, not weaknesses. We'll get to that, I guess, here in a bit. But he commanded a field at the MAC level from a defensive back perspective like no one else may have in the last decade or two. I mean, he was the quarterback on the field on defense, and that goes without saying. He led the nation in forced incompletions in 2022 and 2023. So whether this is the MAC conference and in the group of five, whatever you want to say, he absolutely dominated. Absolutely dominated. Elite acceleration and recovery speed. He's a guy that can be very comfortable and poised in route stems, not get clutchy and grabby. He's got the requisite feet to catch back up. He's a zone coverage maestro, very comfortable in playing it. That's why he's got those pass breakups. He was able to attack the area that was the point of emphasis for the offense in the pass game by through his vision and putting him in the ability to go make plays. The absolute field general as a cornerback. That's I think some of the greatest calling cards he brings to the table is his confidence and comfortability in putting himself into a play area. It's really like no other. He's a tenacious, mean tackler. You can see that photo we have right there is a pretty physical, collision there against Miami in the MAC championship game at Ford Field. Phenomenal ball skills. He's versatile as a zone or a man cover, and again, just this elite closing speed. Quinion Mitchell has got the athletic skills and the requisite defensive back abilities to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL, bar none.
Yeah, and for any, I think most NFL fans, most people understand that, even if you play at in a mid-major, athleticism is athleticism. You're playing the game of football. Lest we forget, Sauce Gardner didn't attend Alabama. He attended Cincinnati, mid-major school.
Very true.
He's a pretty good player. So not comparing the two, but at the same time, you absolutely can find that kind of talent in a mid-major school. So in case anyone forgot or didn't know, you know now. And you just need to, if you don't trust me, Google it. Sauce from Detroit, but he went to Cincinnati. Great player. What do you like? Now, Quinion Mitchell, coach touched on a little bit. Where are some things working against him or things he needs to work on?
Well, he's got to refine his footwork, to maintain his success in the NFL. I mean, just the type of athlete that he is going to be going against is just more consistently and more technically going to be sound and elite than the type of athlete and type of player he, really saw at the MAC. He can be late to react to route stun, leading to getting turned around quite a bit, which, that's gonna, I think we're going to see that a little bit in the NFL. Just no one could really do that to him, at the MAC. He was never really threatened that way. There may have been some interesting things kind of thrown at him from a zone cover perspective, but, as far as man cover stuff, there was no one really going to challenge him, on a weekly basis at Toledo. He will be challenged every day now in the NFL. And that's going to maybe lead to him getting burned a few times. And that's where it leads to, again, that first point. He's got to refine his feet. He does not have a ton of experience as a press man cover. They wanted to, because what they would do is they just would throw away from him all the time if he did that at Toledo. They used him in zone so they could get him involved. And where, that's what you can do with the corners, just run away from them or pass away from them. And look off him all the time. So he's going to have to get a little bit more skilled in that area because he's going to be asked to do it. He's got to refine to be that elite zone defender because, a team that runs a zone coverage scheme for the most part, this is their guy. This is probably their number one player. I mean, he produced it at a level that's just, it's unseen, 52 career pass breakups out of his own zone coverage. That's where he thrives. So that he's just got to continue to refine in that area so he can be one of the top, eventually be one of the top zone cover corners in the NFL. Can be a little inconsistent and miss some tackles. He's very, very fast and aggressive. He's going to come up a little too hard at times, going to generate some whiffs, going to miss a little bit. He's not going to track maybe necessarily the most smoothly, and he's going to lose out on a tackle from time to time. Can show a little stiffness and changing direction. Again, hasn't been asked to do a lot of man cover stuff, been primarily a zone coverage defensive back at the college level. So, he can show, against the dynamic routes and those kinds of things, it could be a little interesting too. Those could be some things that he's going to have to adjust to. And, yes, you bring up a great point. The MAC has yielded some of the greatest players, in NFL history, but it also is by and large not affected by like nil. It's kind of, unfortunately being kind of marketed as almost a stepping stone, kind of a 4-year degree yielding junior college. You can stay there and do your thing, but you're really going to make your name for yourself there and then jump to the next level. And we saw that with our beloved university, with a guy like Braden Fisk, be there for 5 years and leave, and where guys like Marshawn Nealon and Quinyon Mitchell, hung their hat on their school in the MAC. Jaden Reed, another guy that left, Western, went to go to Michigan State as a receiver. So, these are guys that stayed with it. They didn't necessarily take that, opportunity to go to the Power Five. Does it harm them? I'm really hoping not. Because, the Mid-American Conference is a great football conference, great Midwestern Division I football conference. And Quinyon Mitchell is the toast of it. That is for sure.
Yeah, it remains to be seen what the long-term effects are going to be with the NIL. But you did already. We're seeing what you're talking about, Coach. It's being used as the MAC's being used, the mid-level, mid-major schools being used as a stepping stone.
The transfer portal era. That's certainly what it's becoming.
Yeah, and it's going to change the game of college football. That's another topic for another show.
Yeah, and not meaning to go down that rabbit hole.
No, but no, it's legit though. It's an absolute legit point to make, because the likelihood of us seeing more Quinyon Mitchells or Marshawn Nealons, it's going to be perhaps more rare. They're going to end up they're going to be going to Fisk or a Reed route more often than not now. But it is what it is. Let's see what happens out of that. But at the end of the day, Quinyon Mitchell not likely to be available at 29. I would say it'd be probably hard. You'd be hard pressed to say he's going to be available after pick 20. In my view, Coach, stranger things could happen. But talent wise, I don't see how he gets past 20 just because of what he brings to the table. He's so good. Going to be real interesting to see how his career pans out. Would love to see him in Detroit, but I don't think it'll happen. But let's talk about our number 5 prospect, Coach. Now it's starting to get interesting.
Well, I think a lot of One Priders and a lot of, Honolulu blue and silver folk have really kind of narrowed in on this next prospect as a guy that they would really like to be able to see where the Honolulu blue and I could just see all sorts of places, because we're talking about JaQuincy Kool-Aid McKinstry, corner out of the University of Alabama, 6'1", 199, good-sized kid, junior. He's our number 5 cornerback prospect. Drew very, very close to number 4. Just about leapfrogged, Quinyon Mitchell, just because of what he did and where he did it and how he did it is extremely impressive. Birmingham, Alabama native. He's a 5-star recruit, for Coach Saban. 4.4, 740, 2-time All-American, 2-time All-SEC selection, freshman All-SEC selection, 92 career tackles, 25 career pass breakups, 3 career TDs allowed, 15.8 yards per punt return average in 2022. So he was a punt returner as well. 70 career receptions allowed on 146 career targets. So this is a guy who's been thrown at his fair share as well. This is a guy that is one intriguing prospect, because we are now talking about our 5th corner and a guy that really possesses a lot of skill. Again, is this something, do we really have a true gist of exactly the boards? No, we don't. because this is yet another player, Drew, that could be number one on the cornerback board.
And early on he was. And it shows, again, it just speaks to the depth of this group this year. Typically a cornerback's one of the sexy defensive positions, right? That and edge rusher. Those are the guys you're looking at. And what a deep group though. But it's incredible to think that guys this talented could actually be there at 29. But let's talk about what else you like about Kool-Aid.
He started as an 18-year-old true freshman at Alabama in that system for Saban. That's amazing. That's amazing responsibility to have bestowed upon you. So, I mean, he started as a true freshman. He's got great length, 6'1", long frame. He's your traditional outside corner. And he plays with, great awareness, has a great football IQ. You don't get on the football field as early as he did, without having a great understanding of the game. Very good punt returner. He's very calm under pressure as a punt returner. And that's a skill that, again, there are going to be some people that really value that because he's going to bring that to the table for an organization. This is a guy that's extremely comfortable in press man coverage. We've talked about some guys that are a little bit better in zone. This is a guy that's real comfortable in press man coverage. So, this is a guy that likes to go right over the top and take that guy on. He's a very impressive communicator in the secondary, and communication, is tackling, being able to destroy blocks and carry out your scheme of your defense, and communicating changes and communicating calls so everybody's on the same page are the hallmarks of good defensive football. And this is a guy that's a player that you can call almost like a quarterback of the defense. He's a great communicator. That speaks to his football IQ. Again, that's a great trait to bring to the table that might be a little bit more mature than some of the other players that we've already talked about. He plays long and disruptive. He's a recovery speed magician. He's 4.47. He's not 4.28. He doesn't have Nate Wiggins speed or Quinyon Mitchell speed. But he's got very, very good speed. But this is a guy that can look like he's absolutely torched and somehow wind up, either forcing a PBU or making a play on the ball. It's been remarkable. And that's something that you can see a lot in film. He's very comfortable and successful against bigger wide receivers, which really bodes well for his future because there's a lot of big wide receivers in the NFL. He's got tremendous ball skills, can make plays on the ball better than most of the defensive backs that we've talked about, if not all of them. He's very physical and authoritative, and he's very poised and composed. This is a winner of a football player. And if he is at 29, I think you take him. I really do. I guess, we have to say for the success of the team, who else is there at 29? Okay, if Jackson Powers Johnson is there at 29, okay, then I'll take back my words. I'll relent. Is Johnny Newton there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got to think about this a little bit more, and a little bit more in depth. As a guy like Graham Barton, okay, got to think about that a little bit more too. I tell you what, if Kool-Aid's there, even those guys' names being pulled into the mention, boy, would it be tough to pick, because this is the future. This is the future piece. When Mosley's gone, when Davis is gone, when Robertson's gone, Kool-Aid is there. So, this is a guy that you can bring in and be a part of things. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a very, very intriguing guy and would love to see him wear. I'd love to see that blue Kool-Aid.
Yeah, absolutely. And your discussion about who might be available at 29 is absolutely relevant. And I know there's going to be people who are like, no way, we're going to take McKinstry because he's a cornerback. I get it. You don't see highlights of Graham Barton pancaking somebody. You don't see that very often, or Jackson Powers Johnson. You see great plays by corners and receivers and quarterbacks and running backs. I get it. But you make a legitimate argument. If at 29 McKinstry's there and some of those other players, some of those other guys aren't available that are offensive linemen, I don't think there's a lot of discussion to be had then. McKinstry's your guy. You have to have the discussion, though, if there's those linemen. Now, this is for the Detroit Lions specifically. But wow, I mean, to think that a guy like this, and I can see why there's folks that have him number 1 on their board. I absolutely see it.
Absolutely.
There's it's a lot of it's what flavor do you like? Why I like strawberry? I like vanilla better. Well, they're both good. You know what I mean? So it's like it to each their own. But all of these guys are bringing so much to the table with their talent and their ability to be able to start right away and possibly be all pro level players in the NFL. Kool-Aid McKinstry's right there with them. There's some things he does need to work on, or some things you have concerns about, though, Coach. Let's talk about that.
Well, he really walks the line with PI. He's a hand fighter, which that's a technique, and you've got to be able to do that. That's how you're able to force incompletion. You see a lot of it. Balls that were in there and plays that were made, and somehow he just got enough on a hand or a thumbnail or something, a wrist, whatever, to pry that ball loose. But he runs the line there, and he's got to refine his hand fighting, or else he's going to be a PI magnet. He allows receivers to gain too much ground in the route stem, and he gives away a lot of space because he's kind of become one of these escape artists with his ability to recover and get back in phase and make plays on the ball. Can't rely on that in the NFL. You're just going to get burned. He's a very good athlete. He's a very good athlete, obviously, but is he Nate Wiggins athletically? Is he Quinion Mitchell athletically? Is he Terrion Arnold athletically? No, he's not. He's more of a football player than he is an athlete. And that will catch up to him at the NFL level. It will, because the pure form athletes, just they expose. He's very, very smooth operator, but he's not necessarily the most twitchy and explosive. And that's going to get him at times. Could he use some trigger and footwork refinement? Yes, he certainly could. That comfortability he'll once again get that back at the pro level, but he's got to develop it there. That's thus making us probably a great fit for a guy like Kool-Aid, because we can probably protect him that way a little bit and bring him up to speed a little more quietly than he would if he's just thrown to the wolves as a starting CB1 in year one. Will he be a flag magnet in the NFL? Can he stay on the field at outside cornerback? Are these things that he's going to be able to do and develop into, or is he going to get the Jeff Okudah kind of grabby, unable to really kind of find his fit type situation? So I mean, those are the things obviously that he would want to avoid. And Kool-Aid appears to be a guy that can. Again, this is we've said an intriguing prospect for the Detroit Lions a lot today and in previous episodes, but Kool-Aid presents maybe some of the greatest intrigue in that it's still a position of value and worth to us and needing to improve. It has been something that we've been trying to do for years now, and Kool-Aid certainly could really add to us in addressing that.
Yeah, because if like offensive guard and cornerback, the Lions don't necessarily have to address it per se, but they're going to have to address it next year if they don't, because there's going to be vacancies at corner. There's going to be a vacancy at guard. Zeitler's only signed for 1 year. So yeah, you can hang your hat on him for this year, but you're going to need to replace him at some point. So again, these are decisions that have to be made, but so much to like about McKinstry. And I'll admit, Coach, running mock drafts every day over the last 3-4 months now, Kool-Aid McKinstry probably close to half the time is the guy right there. Now, again, that doesn't mean anything. A lot can change, but that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And what's really impressive about McKinstry, and we'll talk about a couple guys like this, but these two are in the top 5. Terrion Arnold was on the opposite side of the field with him. So you couldn't avoid Kool-Aid, because then you're going to go to Terrion Arnold or vice versa. So they both saw a lot of action, and they both performed very admirably. So this is a tremendous athlete and would be a tremendous piece to add to the Detroit Lions if they so choose, if he's there. There's a chance he might not be, but I think I see McKinstry between 20 and 30. I can't see him even dropping out of the first rounders. No way. He's too athletic, too good. And even if there's teams that didn't have a need, someone's going to move up to grab him. He's that good. So very interesting to see what happens with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Coach. let's talk about our number 6 guy.
Our number 6 on the Sports Peninsula podcast big board for corners is Ennis Rakestraw Jr., another player that's been mentioned as the Detroit Lion because, and we'll get to why that could be here very, very shortly. Our number 6 prospect at corner out of the University of Missouri is one of 2 Missouri corners we will be talking about more in detail. 6 foot, 188-pound junior out of Dallas, Texas. Played significant role on the Missouri defense as a true freshman. He tore his ACL in 2021, which caused him that season. So, maybe his numbers are a little bit different than some of the other players that we've just featured, on our presentation. But, you need to take a look at Ennis Rakestraw in a couple of different areas. And that will tell you the story. He still had 30 career stops. From the defensive end. That means the defense got off the field based off of Ennis's play that he made. So that's a great stat. 73 career tackles, 24 career PBUs. So he's very, very productive. He's one of the nation's most looked off corners. He is an off corner. So what I mean by that is that, if there's just 2 cornerbacks on the field, sometimes there's a third, which that carries an area that over the slot receiver and kind of can have an elastic kind of coverage area. Your 2 outside corners, one is typically on the line of scrimmage defending that receiver that's also on the line of scrimmage. And that is going to be the more targeted area of the field. It's what they call the strong area of the field. The ball goes there more. Ennis Rakestraw defended typically the receiver that was off the line of scrimmage. Thus, he was off. He's on the back side of the defense a lot of times. That means the play's being run away from him a lot. And that was kind of just the way he aligned himself. So for us to put him at number 6, Drew, it took some doing because honestly, I think in the NFL, you take your press man corners and guys that have all had that kind of ability, and you build your NFL caliber off corners. You don't necessarily look to draft an off corner. However, when you do it as well as Ennis Rakestraw Jr. does, and film tells the tale, it gets you into the conversation of being a day 1 or day 2 draft pick.
Yeah, you said it very well, Coach. Even with the injury, very impactful player at Mizzou, no question. What else do you like about him?
He's very, again, these guys that are off corners typically drift in the draft. These are guys that drift in the day 2 that we thought this guy would be a 2nd round pick. He wound up being a late 3rd or into the 4th rounder. We thought this guy was a 3rd round pick. He didn't get taken until the 6th. Well, they were off corners, and it's because they typically aren't in a lot of plays. He's very bright and aware off corner. He gets into the fray a little bit more. Think skill-wise, some of the things that Quentin Mitchell brings to the table. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. is not dissimilar. Not dissimilar. He's been a check-down machine. He's been checked down and checked off so much in his career, and that's a testament to him. Guys, this is the type of cornerback that Cam Sutton was. He was an off corner. He was a very successful off corner. Bigger, well in physical, safe, keeps things in front of them, communicates the defense very well. These are the things that Ennis Rakestraw does really well. He's an amazing pre-snap communicator, a la a Kool-Aid McKinstry. Very, very, he's another quarterback of the secondary, another one of these type of players. Outstanding instincts, extremely high football IQ, sees and knows what's going on in front of him. He's physical and aggressive player. He's not afraid to mix it up with bigger players and stick his nose into things. He's a real adept at doing so as a run defender. Likes to come up and play and tackle on the run. He's twitchy. He's fluid in changing directions. Very elastic in his movements, which does give him the capability to learn press man coverage and be a mirror. So he can do this. He just has very, very little experience in doing so in his time at Missouri. Plays long and disruptive. Another guy that's, in that 6'1" area. Plays with outstanding spacing, uses great angles. Again, a very precise. He's a maestro of an off corner and an off coverage corner. And if you're needing that, again, this is a guy that's going to be much higher on your board than some other players are.
So what are your concerns with Ennis Rakestraw Jr., Coach?
Well, he's not an X corner. He's not a CB1. He's not a guy that has played up onto the press and up onto the line of scrimmage an awful lot. You know, what like we said, we could take Kool-Aid McKinstry and make him an off corner. We could take Quinion Mitchell and make him an off corner. We could take Nate Wiggins or Terry and Arnold and make them off corner. You can take those kind of feature alpha dog guys, your CB1s, and make them good, productive off corners. It's much harder to take an off corner and make them a CB1 on the ball type corner. That's much more difficult to do. He's got very, very little press coverage and single coverage, reps, under his belt, Drew. Yeah. He has shown, he has not shown, I'm sorry, that's a typo. He has not shown a lot of mirror ability. So, I mean, it's just something that he's not been asked to do. It's something that he's going to have to learn. And that's not that easy to do. That could take time. And, you don't have much time, in your NFL tenure. He was very limited ball production at Missouri. He doesn't have a ton of it because he's an off corner. He was checked off an awful lot. He needs refinement in his zone coverage because, he's going to need to be a master at it, He's a lighter, more slender built guy, as you can see right there, kind of a thin, narrow guy. He's an aggressive football player. Doesn't mean he can't tackle and those kinds of things, but you do worry about durability with the more slender builds at the NFL level. Can he physically hold up? That's another concern. He's an average athlete for being a high caliber defensive back. It's a very high caliber athletic position. He's more of an average athletic ability. So he's really got to use technique and his know-how. And again, he's coming off of a torn ACL in 2021. It appears that he's fully recovered, but again, that's a big ding to endure, especially as a skill position player in football.
So this is where we have our first an enigma, so to speak, because I've seen Rakestraw going ahead of the Lions. I've seen him going after that pick. He's been kind of all over. I've seen people mocking him to Detroit, which I have no problem with. I do like him a lot. I think I'd like it better if somehow the Lions were able to trade back maybe a couple spots and then still be able to get an athlete, a cornerback at the caliber of Rakestraw. I like him, but I think when we talked about McKinstry, if you had a Barton there or other linemen there, you'd have the decision to make. I wouldn't stress over that decision if it was Rakestraw versus a Graham Barton or Powers Johnson. I would go line and I would go get my corner in day 2. That's just my personal opinion. But there's a lot to like about him, Coach. Your thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, in regards to the Lions, I mean, what makes sense with a guy like Ennis Rakestraw is that he is exactly the replacement for Cam Sutton. True. He's essentially, you're taking what you thought you had with Cam Sutton in the length of his contract and all those kinds of things, and you put Ennis Rakestraw in there and add a year or two. And you also have the complete moldability to make Ennis Rakestraw Jr. your off corner of your defense, and that's all he knows. So I can see the tie-ins there because there is a position fit for the Lions specifically with that. That being said, again, you'd have to teach him all the other nuances. Would he struggle in press man? Would he struggle in man on the ball island coverage like Cam Sutton did?
True.
Because Cam Sutton struggled mightily. That's those are that's very well documented.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, he would, but again, he'd be protected. He'd be protected by the Davises, the Robertsons, the Mosleys, the Branches, the Vildors, in allowing him to get caught up to speed in that regard. So you're thinking, a guy that maybe has the Jacobs, Sutton. The Sutton roster spot, but really in the Jacobs role. That's what you would be getting, and then Ennis Rakestraw would build from there.
Yeah, it's a lot to like about him.
That's what I'm guessing, at least. I'm not making that call, but
no, but it makes perfect sense. There's a lot of directions the Lions could go in terms of having to make a decision about him. But at the end of the day, this is a first round talent, a day one talent that is likely going to start right away and likely going to make immediate contributions right away and could become an all-pro at some point. I think there's a little lower floor with him, like you said, Coach, because like you said, it's a lot easier to take a guy it's adept at press coverage and make him an off corner versus the other opposite direction. So we shall see. But now we go into the even more interesting section. Not that the top 6 aren't interesting because they always are, but now we're going to our dark horses, Coach, and you've got a good one out of Georgia.
Yep. Well, here we go with the dark horses. These are the guys that are rated after our number 6. And Kamari Lassiter comes right in there. He's number 7. He's a corner out of Georgia, 6 foot, 186-pound junior, a Georgia native out of Savannah, 6.623 cone drill. That's a hard drill to run. I just saw that done a lot. You really got to be able to plant and turn on a 90-degree angle to get yourself a nice, concise time. So Kamari Lassiter's got really good feet. He was a four-sport high school athlete, played 4 different sports. So this is a very multi-dimensional athletic kid. He's an all-SEC selection for the Bulldogs, 86 career tackles, 8.5 career tackles for loss, 15 career pass breakups, 48.7 QBR when targeted in 2023. Kamari Lassiter, had to get on the field. That's not easy to do at a place like Georgia. So, that just simply, his numbers are a product of finally 2023 being a year that he could get out there and play a lot more football. Plays with great aggression at the line of scrimmage, real confident and physical at the line of scrimmage, a smart, reliable cornerback, good on the run, plays with great footwork and technique, very fluid athlete. He's an excellent hand fighter, another guy that will work and is pretty successful in mirroring and pressing and press man coverage. Very effective on the outside, is a very dependable tackler in short area pass and on the run. He's very willing and able special teams player too, which is huge for him because that is going to be something that's demanded of him in his career and earlier on in it. Not the most explosive athlete. We can lose a rep or two every once in a while with his first step because it's not quite the same as maybe some of the other prospects that we've talked about. He has gotten out physical despite being aggressive. There's guys that can just be a little bit more masterful in their movements, can kind of have their way with Kamari Lassiter, or at least they have at the major FBS level. Can he physically match up in the NFL? Because that's going to be the question that he's really got to be able to answer. That will be the thing that really spells things out for Kamari Lassiter, because he can be a little grabby and rely a little too much on his hand fighting when things are still in phase. And if that's the case, that's when PIs get thrown. And, we don't want to see him be, and sometimes can be a little too conservative a run defender and yield too much up to create the angle to be able to take care of things. Yes, maybe his urgency is a little bit late sometimes in run. He's got to refine his ball skills and be a little bit more productive on the ball. But outside of that, Kamari Lassiter is going to bring a lot to the table as a special teams defender and your depth out of your defensive backfield, a guy that might be able to be, and turn into a reliable outside corner for you.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be around at 29. I'm not sure the Lions go that direction.
No,
but I don't see him being around when they come around and at this in the second round though. No, I think he's a guy going upper day 2.
Right. I think you're probably right.
Yeah, so he's in that tweener there. He's definitely probably a top 10 pick in round 2, is what I'm guessing. He's a very good player. You never know, Coach. I like him a lot though. I think it's a nice pick. TJ Tampa is our next dark horse here, Coach, out of Iowa State. A cornerback, 6'2", 200 pounds. You talked about Cooper DeJean having that safety build. TJ Tampa's kind of got a build like that as well. He's a St. Petersburg, Florida native, ran a 4.4 540. He's an All-American, a 2-time All-Big 12 player, has 106 career tackles as a senior, 9.5 career pass TFLs, 22 career PBUs, 3 career interceptions, 54.8 QBR rating when targeted in last year in 2023. That's very good. 60 career receptions against only as a senior. That's very good. And 116 career targets. So Certainly a guy that made plays when he was targeted. What are his strengths? Well, he's got an excellent blend of size and fluidity. I love his size. I think his height, his length, and the way he hits, I really like him. He has high level production on the ball. He's a strong tackler, very, very important. Quite frankly, that's what I think they need to replace by losing CJ Gardner-Johnson. Even though he didn't play that much last year when he got hurt, you could see immediately how tough he was against the run and how he was able to keep the edge. I like TJ Tampa in that perspective. He's extremely technical and nuanced positionally on the field. He's very physical in coverage. He's elite at times in forcing incompletions. As you can see, a 54.8 QBR rating last year when he's targeted. That's very good. Very physically attuned to the run game. Very important. And very reactionary and smooth operator in the game. So he's fluid. And he's able to respond. And he looks smooth doing it. You got to love a lot of what you see on tape with TJ Tampa. So what does he need to work on and what's kind of holding him back? So he can dip into tackles, which I coach, correct me if I'm wrong, man. You put your head down a little bit, you can lose sight of your target, and that can get you into trouble right there. So that's something he needs to work on. He's gotten turned around his fair share of times, and you look on film, it can happen. So he can lose his receiver sometimes when he's looking up for that ball. And a lot of times, most really good corners, they're rarely going to look up or look back until the very last second. Which is why you'll see guys get in trouble by not turning back to look at the ball so that the contact they're making can be excused because while he's trying to make a play on the ball, he's got to get better at that. He can tend to get too upright and stand. So I think part of that might be because he relies on his physicality so much that he's almost geared up ready for that. So he's got to be careful with that. He needs to refine as a tackler to maintain production in the NFL. So you can be the toughest guy on the planet and lightning quick, but if you don't keep your eyes on that target, you're going to look really silly, and that could be a big problem. So that's something he's definitely going to have to work on. So he can be over aggressive and overcommit on play route triggers. So again, mentally dialing it back a little bit. But I'll tell you what, Coach, I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but TJ Tampa is going to be available at 29. So I guess the question becomes, do you like his physicality so much that you'd be willing to kind of deal with the blemishes because he's going to be a big time threat as a run defender, as a corner, as well as a good coverage guy?
Yeah, he bringing in 6'2", 200 pounds, that kind of size. And I think the Lions like themselves, a taller, bigger corner. And a great player against the run, again, taking away a dimension of the game, right? And a part of the game that the Lions try to take away. So, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And the Lions have been, I believe, have brought TJ Tampa in as one of their interviews and one of their workouts. So, bringing attention to TJ Tampa is pretty smart in that regard. So, I mean, I'm all about TJ Tampa, but at 29 again, is that the best player we can select at 29? I mean, if that's the case, then I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. I'm just, again, I'm not sure that that's where that's going to be, just because we have seen a couple of things, in regards to his refinements of his game, and he has kind of yielded a little bit of a different. At times in his career, has been turned around a little bit. So, I mean, this is a guy that's lost in coverage a few times. So, TJ Tampa's a Detroit Lion. I'm all for it. At 29, if that's where it would have to be, I'm not so sure. But, that's time will tell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nope. Great synopsis, Coach. Here's your next dark horse out of Michigan.
Yes. We're going to come back to the Wolverine state and talk about a Wolverine. Something that we've done quite a bit this past winter and early spring, Drew. Mike Sainristil is a defensive back out of the University of Michigan. We say defensive back because this guy is a very, very positionally and aligned all over the place for the Wolverine defense. 5'10", 182-pounder. I haven't talked about a guy that small. Senior out of Everett, Massachusetts. Runs a 4.01 pro shuttle. 40-inch vertical leap, 11-foot broad jump. So this is a teched up athlete, a guy that is very well put together. He was an All-American for the Wolverines, a 2-time All-Big Ten selection, 2024 national champion, 2-time team captain. So this is a guy that is very heralded just as a player for the Wolverines. Also played wide receiver and played it substantively. Many Wolverine fans can remember that quite well. 11 and a half career tackles for loss, 7 career interceptions still in his limited body of work, 20 career PBUs and 5 receiving TDs. So you got 7 career interceptions and 5 receiving touchdowns. So it's kind of intriguing, really in that regard. Exceptional ball skills. This kid can make plays on the football that are just absolutely sublime. You want to look it up, you look up his YouTube highlights and you see a ton. Very strong in run support. This guy's a very willing and able run supporter for a 5'10", 185 pound defensive back. Real willing tackler that way. He played 3 years at receiver. Three of his 5 years were used as a wide receiver at Michigan. He's just an outstanding athlete. He's got quick, precise footwork. He'll run himself into a route stem very comfortably because he understands those nuances and that footwork as a receiver. He's got a relentless motor, tremendous effort player, which again, that's something that bodes real well here in Detroit. A true quick twitch athlete. He's a phenomenal blitzer. Really brings that part of the game, an element to the field. He can come in. He is a absolute bullet as a blitzer and a tenacious competitor. This is also a player that really has a lot of Detroit Lion type of qualities to him. Doesn't have the greatest long speed. He's 5'10", 182. Some people are all long speed and have a tough time getting out of the gates. Some people are a little bit better at getting out of the gates and not so much in the long speed. This guy gets out of the gates real well. Not real fluid or not real burner speed down the field. His low angle tackles. So he's got to have low angle tackles, or else he's going to have himself a lot of concussions and upper body injuries. That being said, he's going to whiff at times. He's going to come up short. He's not going to be able to roll quite into it. The timing might be off, and that size is going to be a restriction. It's going to be a restriction. Unfortunately, in football, yes, small people can succeed and be great players in the NFL, can be great players in the game of football. They bring a lot to the table, but they also have restrictions, and that is going to be one of them. He's going to get over aggressive at times. He's going to guess wrong. He's going to get lost in the route stem. This is going to happen to a lot of young defensive backs. And is he going to struggle with some man coverage against the tall, phenomenal athletes? He could. And the dynamic receivers, he could. That could be a bit of a struggle. It was at times in Ann Arbor as well. He's relatively green as a corner, so he's got some growth to do and refinement in the position in general. But again, this is a day 2 guy. This is a day 2 football player that I do think the Detroit Lions could get their hands on at a pick 61.
Yeah.
So, this would be a guy that I think Lions fans would love to see because they knew what he meant to the Michigan defense and what he brought to the table. And, the only thing is that size. But I tell you what, are there 5'10", 185-pound cornerbacks succeeding in the NFL? There are. Mike Sainristil going to probably be another one of them.
Yeah, that would definitely in play at 61, especially if the Lions do go a different direction at 29, which is there's a high probability of that. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if they did go a different direction at 29, he's very much in play at 61. They'll have a similar decision there versus some defensive linemen or maybe O linemen that are going to be available at that time, maybe even receiver at that point when you're talking later date, round 2 on day 2. But Sainristil is going to be right there. And yeah, of course, here in the Sports Peninsula, we've seen a lot of him, and we know what he does bring to the table and what he did mean. And you hit it right on the head, Coach. Great player, going to be a very good NFL player for a long time, and he has a decently high ceiling. The concern here is if he doesn't hold up well against the more physical NFL, that could be an issue. But I don't think we're going to talk about Mikey Sainristil, 3-4 years from now saying, well, what could have been. I think we're going to be talking about and saying he's done a fine job at the very least. We could be saying, hey, look, another Wolverine and Pro Bowl consideration. I think there's a lot to like here. Let's talk about Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon, the cornerback, 6'4", 195-pound senior. I'll say it again, 6'4", senior. This is a very good football player. I like him a lot, Coach. He's from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. He's a JUCO transfer. And then he transferred from Alabama. He was all Pac-12 at Oregon. He played in 21 games for the Crimson Tide. The quarterbacks had a 41.6 rating when they targeted Jackson in 2023. That's outstanding. And don't forget, he played against Michael Penix a couple of times last year too. So he held up well. 3 interceptions last year, 10 PBUs, and also 3 interceptions at Fort Scott CC, where he transferred from originally. So played well and contributed everywhere he went at the college level. What do we like about him? Well, he's long and explosive. Again, 6'4". Really like that length, and the fact that he's explosive at that size it really caught my attention. A very productive blitzer, and evades blocks well, which is very useful. Uses every bit of his length as an advantage, which is great. He has a high football IQ. He's a very good zone cover cornerback, and he has impressive recovery speed, which again, you start getting concerned when guys get that lanky. Anything over 6'2", you start wondering about that. Are they a little gangly or a little awkward? Not the case here. And he's very competitive as a press cover corner as well. So lot to like there. What do we see as an issue? Well, it does need to add some mass and strength. When you look there, he's 6'4", 195 pounds. We've talked about a lot of guys around 200 pounds, and you can see they're pretty rocked up. You can see Mr. Jackson's pretty lean. So that could be a concern. Kind of a lot of breakdowns and redirections. So that's something he needs to work on as well. Dynamic route runners have had their way with him, which again leads to that, having breakdowns and redirection. Gets very clutchy in the trail position. So again, this is a situation where Jackson really needs to keep the receiver in front of him as much as possible to be able to react better. As long as he's put in those positions, it's going to benefit him. Will he be? So he's getting clutch. He's going to be a flag magnet in the NFL. Well, that's the concern. One thing leads to another. So again, these are questions that need to be asked about Kyrie Jackson. Not tremendously fast. Certainly has good speed, but again, not a burner. And must become a better mirror to be better in press man coverage in the NFL. So, in Coach, a lot of what I see here, I saw on tape where he definitely uses his length to his advantage, because there are times where he does get either behind a receiver or somebody's able to cut in front of him, but he's able to make up for that with his length. What do you like about him?
Yeah, how he uses his length and knows how to use his length and the angles he uses. I mean, he's definitely got a high football IQ, and I really, really like that. I mean, you don't see athletes his size kind of move the way he does, and you don't see them play the positions that he plays. So I mean, he's kind of like, he takes, and could really be a guy that, because he knows how to use angles and read those things, could be like an amazing asset when you get inside the red zone. Yeah. I see, and I'm intrigued for the Lions when it looks to a guy like Kyrie Jackson. I do. I like what I see. I do think his athletic ability probably is a niche, is probably just a peg down from some of the other prospects, but again, Drew, I've seen him in the second round. I've seen him in the fifth. It's hard to say what is it that they don't want to, be able to give Kyrie Jackson that he needs to be able to show. This is also a guy that has Brad Holmes written all over him. Somehow we moved back 5 spots in the third round with one of our picks to get an earlier 5th round selection, and lo and behold, it's Kyrie Jackson, and lo and behold, 3 years later, he's a Pro Bowler. That's the type of thing that because Kyrie Jackson has some of those requisite skills. You don't not pay attention when you see somebody that tall and that successful as a defensive back.
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting guy to track in the NFL. Even if he's not a Lion, it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. Let's talk about your next dark horse, Coach.
My last dark horse, another guy that I do think that the Detroit Lions could be in on a day 2 or even maybe a day 3. And that's Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest, 6 foot, 199 pounder. So another 6 foot, 200-pound defensive back, good sized football player out of Waldorf, Maryland. So another Maryland prospect, out of the state of Maryland. All state in football, basketball, and track in high school. Runs a 4.48 40, was all ACC for the Demon Deacons, 120 career tackles, 29 career pass breakups, 3 career interceptions, 2 career forced fumbles, 2 career fumble recoveries, and 22 career stops. So a very productive player for the Demon Deacon defense. Got strong-handed and sturdy frame. He can really utilize his hands to press and be physical at the line of scrimmage. It helps him destroy blocks. He's a sturdy framed football player, kind of built for the NFL as a defensive back. He's a great ball tracker. He gets really good looks and plays upon them very, very well. Over 2,000 snaps at Wake Forest on defense. So this is a very experienced college football player. Plays with great physicality. Again, he uses his hands very well. He navigates the route stem very confidently. He can get there in press man coverage and mirror. He's not going to overreact. He's not going to guess. He's going to play the route stem and mirror. So this is a guy that's a very willing and able press man cover and man cover player. Fiercely competitive, high octane motor, high revving player. What you want to see on defense. He's got great balance, uses his footwork to his advantage. He's a technician in that area. He's very physical at the catch point. It's probably going to yield a pass interference or 2, but it's also going to make a lot of plays. Then they have a lot of ball production at Wake Forest. So that's probably where people are going to see, okay, he does all these things, but, 29 career pass breakups and 2,000 snaps. Yikes, it's not many. That's what some people are going to see and say. He must refine to be a better zone cover. That's where he probably lacks a little bit, is his comfortability and trust as a zone coverage defensive back. That's something that's going to have to be learned a little bit. However, Kalen Carson likely is a guy that will be able to do that. He doesn't have a lot of long speed. Again, he's good in the short area. A lot of short area quickness, a lot of burst and twitch. But as far as long speed and covering deep routes, can be a little bit concerning there. He can get a little aggressive. It's going to yield some yellow flags. We talking about a flag magnet? Hopefully not here. But he's got to refine his overall technique. So this is a guy that's going to be drafted probably a little bit later in the draft. Again, it could be very well on day 2, but it's also speculated that he could be a guy that goes into day 3, and he's going to cut his chops a little bit in special teams and in depth, but over time be someone similar to the cornerback that he was at Wake Forest.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. And if the Lions address other needs early in the draft, this is an excellent decision to make here to get Carson later in the draft, whether it's early day 3, even potentially round 3, late day 2, if they were able to make some moves like you mentioned. Yeah, a lot to like with Kalen Carson, and he has a decent ceiling. I mean, you're talking about potentially a very solid starting corner, and perhaps somebody that's a fixture on your team for a long time. So definitely like him a lot. It's hard to pinpoint where he will go in predicting, and it's difficult. But again, there's so much to like about him that to get him on day 3 would be an absolute gem in my view. So like Kalen Carson, curious to see how it turns out. And our last dark horse here, in another tandem player here, we got a couple Mizzou corners. We talked about that earlier. We talked about Ennis Rakestra Jr., and the opposite of him was Chris Abrams-Drain out of Mizzou, the junior, 5'11", 179-pounder. So he's from Mobile, Alabama. He ran a 4.44 40, and he's an All-American, All-SEC player, 135 career tackles, 40 career pass breakups, 7 career interceptions, and 28 career stops. And again, you talked about those stops, making plays on third down to get your defense off the field. That's an important stat. That's really key here for Abrams Drain. What do we like about him? Well, he's got elite feet, and he's got top end agility and speed production. So he can burn. Brings a lot of physicality in the run game, which was definitely nice. And you can see that on tape too. Definitely like to see that. And he's not huge, obviously, about average size, about my size, quite frankly. So to be able to be that physical in the run game, that's pretty impressive. A wide receiver background translates to his ball skills. So that's really critical. That's why we like Sanders so a lot too, because he knows he played receiver for 3 years. Abrams Drain has some time at receiver as well, so he understands how that position's played, and he certainly can process better knowing those things. And then he played quarterback in high school as well, so obviously knowing the field, understanding what the receivers do, and that's where that football IQ comes into play. Very good athlete. He's coverage versatile. He's great in press man coverage, and in college, that's what he played primarily. That's very, very good to see. So again, when you're talking about making a guy an off corner, like you've mentioned several times, Coach, this is a guy you could convert to that. That's something to look at. Now, what does he need to work on? He's got to get bigger and stronger. He's I would say he's slightly below average build, but I wouldn't call him small, but he's not a 6 foot 200 pounder, right? He's about 20 pounds shy of that. So probably needs to get a little stronger. He will struggle at the catch point due to the height restriction. You're going to be trying to cover guys that are likely 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers, and you're going to have to make up for that. It's going to be a difficult getting those 50-50 balls. So he can get lost in the route stem too. So again, is he better as an off corner in the NFL? Probably. That's my view of it. He relies on trail recovery speed too much, far too much. And we've talked about guys doing that, but we're talking about guys that like Mitchell, who was clocked at 24 miles an hour in game speed. We're not talking about that here with Abrams Drain. So that's a habit that's going to have to be corrected. And then he needs to refine to be a great tackler in the NFL. Like the willingness, like that he's willing to do it and is able to do it. Definitely has to refine his technique, though, to be a really great tackler in the NFL. And the top receivers will turn him around. Top receivers probably going to turn a lot of guys around. There's no question about that, but that is a concern. So this isn't a shutdown corner we're talking about. But, Coach, I really like his skill set, and I see him as a day 3 guy, early day 3 guy, maybe 5th round guy, but definitely like him a lot. Your thoughts on Abrams Drain?
Yeah, they're going to do that because of his build and size. I mean, this is another very productive player. 40 career pass breakups. That's a lot. He's a very, very high frequency player for Missouri. Another player I like for us. I mean, I really do. I like both. This is more of the X corner, the field corner than the off corner. We talked about Rakestraw being the off corner. This is your field corner here. This is the guy that was up on the line doing things in press man coverage for Missouri. And look at those numbers. I mean, he's very, very productive. So if you like Ennis Rakestraw and his production, you should really like Chris Abrams Drain as well. I love this prospect, Drew. I'm glad you chose him because I think he's a real a keeper and a guy that's going to definitely have an impactful rookie 5 years. And likely much more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be thrilled if the Lions went this direction on day 3, knowing that this is how they're going to address the cornerback position, because seeing that, you'll know that they've addressed other positions as well with some really key athletes. So it's exciting stuff. And Coach, to wrap this one up, next week we're going to talk about our final position group, which is the quarterbacks, which typically is that's the group to talk about. And most of the time, they're pretty deep groups, and this year's no exception. And I say that with a lot of with a big smile on my face, because let them all go early, because that's going to push guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Kool-Aid McKinstry down in the draft. Here we go, because we've got our guy and we've got our backup. So there's no need to clamor about that. That position's been addressed by the Detroit Lions, but oh my goodness, there are like there's definitely 6 very, very high level prospects, arguably 4 that are top 10 on the quarterback. So that's going to be interesting. And again, is that a position group that the Lions are looking at? No, but is it important to their draft in terms of how it's going to play out in round 1? Oh, yeah, it is. Coach, your final thoughts before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with quarterbacks, and yeah, we'll talk about that more next week. But the effect that the quarterbacks are going to have on the Detroit Lions. We were talking for a long, long time, towards the end of Matt Stafford, that we need to start thinking about replacing him, and doing so in those subsequent drafts. We made the move and got him to Los Angeles and acquired Jared Goff. That really didn't change things so much at that point in time. We were kind of thinking the same way still, and that maybe this last year or this year would be the drafts where we get the next long-term Detroit Lions quarterback. Well, we likely do have him in Jared Goff, and that has changed the tenor for drafting quarterbacks here, at least for the interim. We shall see in subsequent years. Obviously, that's going to change. But this year, you are absolutely correct, Drew. That position group, as plentiful as it is not going to be something that we are going to be probably pulling from. That being said, it is going to definitely affect where certain other players would go in the first round, thus getting them perhaps in position for the Lions to draft them. So, yes, that's going to be exciting to talk about next week. But as far as defensive back, I think we talked about several guys that could be Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions could go away from the position group and look at it as a day 3 fill, and maybe that even with that being a undrafted free agent. So we shall see, but really like a lot of defensive backs that we talked about today, really all of them, every single one of those 12 players that we highlighted today. I really like all 12 of them.
Yeah, definitely. Wouldn't mind at all if any of them or all of them. Well, I know they won't all be there, but
don't need them all, Drew. Don't
need them all. We don't need them all, but I like them a lot. I mean, I'm really enthusiastic about this group, and that's. I'll be honest with you. If just going into the off season, I was just hell bent cornerback, and guard. Though to me, there were very few options outside. Maybe defensive end, edge rusher too at 29. The Lions, Brad Holmes in particular, have done a fine job of addressing a lot of their needs, and now they put themselves again in a position where they can draft who they feel is best going to help this football team, and that's ideally what you want to be able to do. So whatever position group that is, I'm gonna trust Brad Holmes is doing the right thing, and it's in the facts and data. The record's there: 2 straight winning season, NFC Championship appearance last year, and a lot of expectations coming into this year. This team already is lined up to compete and contend for a Super Bowl. That's without a draft class. You add this draft class in, let's see where this conversation goes from here. So it's going to be fun to watch here in Detroit. That's for sure. So folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. If you haven't already done so, please do like and subscribe. We have weekly content. I think this is episode 49 this year, Coach. So we pretty much average one a week. Sometimes we exceed that average, folks. Sometimes we have some bonus coverage in there. You never know. And we do our best to put a lot of content out there. So for Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners, my name is Drew. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.